guys, welcome to a very important topic that we are going to discuss today, that is your ocular chemical injuries. So let's start. Why actually I chose this as a topic? One of the true ophthalmic emergencies it is. I always say this in classes that ophthalmology is one branch that is not giving you too many emergencies, and rather that is a pros of ophthalmology, that you do not handle too many emergencies, but the emergencies that you have in ophthalmology are really emergent, and it is one of them. Number two, it is one condition which is so much emergent, which is so much urgent that you can even delay the history taking in that person, the examination, right? Every time when we say that this is a ocular emergency or this condition is an emergency, we always seek on taking quick history and examination. But here this is slightly different. And it is one condition where history taking and examination will be delayed, and first you have to do the intervention. Number three, it is one condition where you require so much of coordination with the physician, with the surgeon, and later on with the psychiatrist also. There are so many novels which have been built only on chemical injuries, chemical burns, acid burns. There is a lot of movies which have been made. You know, it's a upcoming social cause also. So not only we are medically, we are also ethically actually bound to treat such cases, because not only it leaves a everlasting impact on your face, on your eyes, on your physical health, but also on your mental health. So we require the strict coordination of an ophthalmologist with a physician, with a surgeon, and the psychiatrist. The other important thing is bilateral chemical exposure is especially devastating, and more often than not we have a complete visual disability. Now can you think a simple acid injury or alkali injury resulting in the bilateral complete vision loss? So I think I have given you enough evidence of telling you that this is an ophthalmic emergency. Okay, now though how much it is important and how much it is emergency, that this has been classified as a international disease which is serious in the ICD classification. It comes under the 940.2.3, 372.06, and we have got the ICD-10 also. So alkali chemical burns to the conjunctiva and cornea, we have acid chemical burns to the cornea and conjunctiva, we have chemical conjunctivitis, and the corrosion of the cornea and conjunctival sac. So in this form it is relating with the PSM people, because it is relating to the social health also, and it is relating with the forensic medicine too. Alright, now coming up to the epidemiology. Now though many cases that you come across are females, because you know the injuries occurring due to a assault, that is why they come more to the notice, but that does not mean that it is occurring only in the females. It is more common in young males. 2/3 of the cases are occurring in young males. 2/3 of the cases are occurring at domestic places. You know, we are careful when we are dealing with the acids, with the alkalis, when we are at such environment, we are working in industries, laboratories, but unknowingly we are using so many acids, so many corrosives, so many alkalis at our workplace without realizing that each and every day, each and every minute we are at a risk of chemical burn. 2/3 of the injuries are occurring by the alkalis or the acids, and 2/3 are minor injuries. 2/3 are minor injuries which are coming under grade 1 or grade 2. Only 1/3 will be the severe injuries. Okay, now let us see what are the type of chemical injuries that can take place. So we can have broadly two kind of chemical injuries. One is the alkali burns, and another is your acid burns. Now what happens, we have this reflex that whenever we listen to a alkali burn, acid burn, it is the acid that actually haunts our mind, acid injury, but actually it is actually the alkali injury which is more dangerous because of its rapid penetration. Now how this is taking place, I'll tell you that also. What happens, acid burns are less severe than the alkali injuries because they have the advantage of the protein precipitation. They are actually going inside, they precipitate the proteins, and this of their action actually prevents them from going further, and this will help acids not leading to the perforations. The exception, now this is a MCQ, the only exception is your hydrofluoric acid, which is as dangerous as the alkali burn, which can cause penetration, which can cause perforation, but not the other ones. Then we have got something called as irritants. Now they are not coming under the category of acids or alkalis, they are just the irritants. They have a neutral pH, and basically their problem is causing the discomfort than the actual damage. They are causing more and more discomfort. So I would say rather discomfort is better than not having, because if you are having discomfort, that means it's just an irritant, and if you are not having the discomfort, maybe you are going to suffer a lot from the acid injury or an alkali injury. Okay, for example, now you are having so many irritants in your household only. We have got the detergents, we have got the pepper sprays. So when you are instilling the salt and pepper, we are using these household detergents, all these things are actually acting as the irritants in the home. Alright, now let us try to compare between the acid and the alkali injury. As I told you, always I do tell one thing, that the more severe things are less common. So alkali injuries are more severe and acid injuries are less severe. Now let us see the difference. If you look at the acids, what is happening? They are penetrating, and basically they are denaturing the proteins which are present in the corneal stroma. So what they are doing when they are denaturing these proteins which are present in the corneal stroma, they are precipitating these proteins, and actually they are retarding the additional penetration. So this is the main important thing. So that means the localized damage that it is causing, it is basically causing, one is due to the precipitation of the proteins mainly at the level of the epithelium, and second is your coagulation defect. So basically they are leading to a physical barrier. Okay, so I think the mechanism of action of the acids is favoring us because it is retarding the deeper penetration by itself. On the other hand, if you look at the chemical one, now the chemicals, that is the alkalis, they are penetrating rapidly and often in less than 1 minute, and they are not combining with the proteins. Now here they are basically combining with the membrane lipids. They are combining with the membrane lipids, they are the mucopolysaccharides and to the collagen. So what is happening? saying there is a disruption of the cells and the necrosis of the tissue. I think you should actually catch this word. Necrosis is one word that you should carry on till the last, and because that one word will help you understand the whole of the story behind this chemical injury. So what is happening? They are combining with the membrane lipids, they are causing the necrosis, they saponify the cell membranes, and their intercellular bridges are actually crossed and crossed and crossed, and that is facilitating the rapid penetration into the deeper compartments, and actually it is even going into the aqueous and the vitreous compartments. Can you imagine a agent which is combining with the membrane lipid, it is penetrating through the layers of the cornea, and even it is going to the aqueous and the vitreous level. So what are the two catch words that you have to remember? We have the necrosis of the conjunctival blood vessels, and this appearance is called as cooked fish eye. The cornea is as white, as chalky and opaque. Let us quickly look at this. So the appearance of a cooked fish eye, can you see? Cooked fish eye is the appearance that you are going to get in cases of alkali injury, while in cases of the acids it is something like this, where you have precipitation of the proteins and therefore the barrier is maintained, a physical barrier. Alright. Now coming to the alkali substances which can actually cause this injury, and you have to be careful while dealing with any of these. So what are they? The ammonia. Ammonia is a very important and a common ingredient that is present in the cleansing agent, so you don't have to do much of the hard work searching for it. Then you have sodium hydroxide that is present in the drain cleaners. You have potassium hydroxide, magnesium hydroxide, calcium hydroxide. Now calcium hydroxide is the most common agent. Should I tell you, calcium hydroxide is actually the tuna particles, the whitewash going into the houses. So every now and then you have tuna particles at the domestic places. Then what are the other things? We have fertilizers, we have got cleaning products, we have got drain cleaners, you have plasters, we have POPs, we have cement. So every kind of these things are actually corrosive materials and the alkalis. Now looking at the acids, what are the acids that can cause the eye burns? So the acids, the most common one, and I told you that this is one which can cause even the perforation, that is the sulfuric acid, the most common cause which is present in the automobile batteries. Again, you don't have to search it. It's not too hard to get the sulfuric acid spill from your automobile batteries. Then you have sulfurous acid, you have hydrofluoric acid, and hydrofluoric acid is causing the most serious injuries. So can you see the potential MCQs? The only acid that can cause penetration, the most common acid present in the automobiles, the most serious acid is your hydrofluoric acid. Then you have the nitric acid, the acetic acid, chromic acid, hydrochloric acid. What are the common substances? Apart from these common substances present at the home, we have got the glass polishes. So we have got the glass polishes, that is hydrofluoric acid at home. We have got the vinegar too. Now let us see some of the things on which actually, what are the factors on which a chemical injury depends upon. The severity of a burn actually depends upon the surface area of the contact. How much of the surface areas are coming in contact? What is the depth of penetration? How much penetration it is causing? What is the concentration of that particular agent? Maybe acid, maybe alkali. What is the time of the contact and what is the time of interference? The degree of limbal stem cell injury. Now have you noticed this? Why this is important? Why the degree of limbal stem cell injury is important? Because you know these stem cells are the cells which will be helping us potentially to regenerate. These are the totipotent cells. So these limbal stem cells, if they are getting lesioned, obviously the injury will be more and more devastating. Now, second important thing, what are the common areas in the eye that can get the damage? So, it is the anterior segment of the eye. Why? Because whenever there is a spill, it is first the anterior segment, especially talking about the lids, the cornea, the conjunctiva and the lens. So, always at the stake are these common organs, right? Now, coming to the pathophysiology of the ocular injuries. So, first of all, if you see how the corneal damage is taking place, and if you remember, I told you carry the word necrosis till the last. So, there is necrosis of the conjunctiva and the corneal epithelium. It is going inside, it is disrupting the limbal stem cells as well as its vasculature. There will be loss of the limbal stem cells, and then there will be vascularization. Whenever we have vascularization of the cornea, it is always harmful, it can lead to corneal ulcer and the corneal opacity. So, we have the conjunctivalization and vascularization of the corneal surface, persistent corneal epithelial defects with the sterile corneal ulceration. So, I told you whenever we have vascularization, always we have a risk of corneal ulcer, though it will be sterile, but still it can lead to corneal opacity. Alright. Now, if you look at the long term effects, now these are again your potential MCQs. What are the things that can occur due to chemical injury? So, we can have the symblepharon formation, we can also have the cicatricial atrophion. See, whenever we have what you call as a burns, we will have the scarring, and due to this scarring, we can have the symblepharon formation also, we can have the cicatricial kind of atrophion also. Then the anterior chamber penetration can also lead to the damage in the iris and the lens. Now, if you look at the ciliary epithelium, that can also be damaged, and that will impair the secretion of ascorbate. Now, why do you require ascorbate? Ascorbate is one thing that is required for collagen production, for the corneal repair. So, can you see now, if there is a damage, you will have a problem in the collagen production, that is the main component of the corneal stroma, and you will have a problem in corneal repairing, and ultimately you will also have hypotonia and phthisis bulbi, and you can get a small eyeball because ciliary epithelium is not producing the aqueous humor. Okay. Now, coming to the pathophysiology of the ocular injuries. So, how does it take place? If you look at the healing, how the corneal healing in terms of epithelium and the stroma will take place. So, if you start with the epithelium, we have got, now again an important question, we have got centripetal movement of the cells. Centripetal means from the peripheral cornea towards the center, and we have got the mobilization of the cells which is taking place either from the peripheral cornea, or we have got the limbus, and in the last we have got the conjunctiva, which is actually responsible for the replacement of the cells. Now, what happens? Only partial transdifferentiation of the conjunctival epithelium to the corneal epithelium is possible. Now, why I am saying this typical word that only partial transdifferentiation is possible? Why? Because the conjunctiva derived epithelium never fully expresses the corneal epithelial phenotypic features. So, even if you are getting the cells migrated from the conjunctiva to the cornea, it will never be able to match the cornea phenotypically. Associated with the delayed reepithelialization, you can have lot of vascularization, both the superficial as well as deep stromal vascularization, and then we can have the persistence of the goblet cells in the corneal epithelium, poor epithelial basement membrane adhesion. So these are the things which are actually related to the chemical burn, which can again hamper the repair and healing of the corneal stroma. Limbal stem cells that I told you before also are the most qualified cells to restore the functional competency of the corneal epithelium, and we are having the loss of the limbal stem cells too. So that is the most severe damage. I must say, this is a point to be remembered. This is the most severe damage that one can expect due to the chemical burn. Now, what about the stroma? What about the stroma? The maintenance and regeneration of this corneal stroma. Who is doing it? This is actually the responsibility of another pluripotent cells called as keratocytes. Now, what are the functions of these keratocytes? First is the phagocytosis of the collagen fibrils. So, whatever collagen fibrils have already been necrosed, the dead cells and the debris are present, that has to be removed by the phagocytes. Now, second thing, they have to secrete the collagen aminoglycosides, because you know when the collagen formation has to take place, I will require the glycosaminoglycans, I will require the ground glass substance, and I will also require the collagenase enzyme and the inhibitors also, so that you can retard the collagenolytic property. Modulated by the cytokines which are coming from epithelium, then you require the inflammatory cells and the keratocytes. Okay, now what is done? Actually, this problem is actually occurring due to the degradation of the basement membrane collagen, and this is basically started by MMP, matrix metalloproteinases. So basically they are causing the degradation of the corneal stroma matrix by the MMP1 and MMP8. We have got the collagenesis type, and this is detected earliest at the 9 hours. So when does the collagen type 1, because you know in the cornea we have got mainly the collagen type 1, again an important question. So synthesis mainly it is peaked at, so synthesis of this collagen is peaking between 14 to 21 days, which is also coinciding with the MMP activity. So this clearly shows that it has some relation with the matrix metalloproteinases. Now intervening period, obviously because there is necrosis, there is a degradation, can be showing you corneal ulcer, but that will be sterile. Okay. Now coming to the clinical features. What kind of clinical features do we expect from such patient? First we will look at the symptoms and then the signs. So this is an emergency, it has a necrosis, it has a corrosive property, so obviously the patient will have pain, patient has watering because of the inflammation, patient is having photophobia, there will be fear of light, there is lid spasm, blepharospasm, and obviously because of the corneal ulceration, scarring, opacification, ultimately there will be diminution of vision. Now what about the signs? If you look at this patient, there will be edema, there will be chemosis, there will be corneal abrasions. Now what do you mean by chemosis? Chemosis is the edema of the conjunctiva. It is the edema of the conjunctiva. Alright, now let us see the effects of the ocular surface. So if the ocular surface is hampered, what are the things that you are going to expect? Start from the lid. In the lid we were having the edema, and afterwards what it can lead to? It can lead to the scarring, and scarring will lead to inward dragging of the eyelid margin. So that can lead to the cicatricial atrophion. Then secondly, it can also lead to dermatitis. Due to dermatitis, there can be outward turning also. We can have the cicatricial atrophion, or in the last we can expect the ulcers too. But if you look at the conjunctiva, in the immediate phase you will have the congestion, you will have injections, you can have ulcers, you can have edema. but in the last you will have the symblepharon, you will have xerosis and even the pseudopterygium. And I must say this is a very important part of your MCQs, because many times they ask you where do you get the pseudopterygium, how to differentiate a pterygium from a pseudopterygium, where do you get a symblepharon, very important questions. Okay, then coming to the cornea. So these things are somewhat same edema, you can have ulcers in the acute phase. Now if you look at the later side, so you will have perforations, you have vascularized opacities, xerosis and drying. If you look at the uveal tract, again you have acute inflammation, especially the anterior segment, therefore it is the anterior uveitis, and lately it can lead to the atrophic bulbi. So if you look at the intraocular pressure, now this is most of the cases due to the inflammation, there will be increase in the intraocular pressure, and afterwards due to the fibrosis also you will have increase in the intraocular pressure. Now coming to the classification. So instead of going in much details about the classification, I will say that two things are very important. You should know the name of these classifications. You have got the Roper Hall or modified Hughes classification, and second is your Dua classification. So if they are asking you about these classifications, you should know that they are with respect to the chemical injuries or the chemical burns, and second important thing, what are the grades on which they are dependent. So basically their modified Hughes classification and the Roper Hall depends upon the degree of corneal involvement along with the limbal ischemia, while the Dua classification depends upon the limbal involvement, and this limbal involvement has to be taken in terms of clock hours, and second is the percentage of conjunctival involvement. So there was a trial that was done in a randomized controlled trial of the acute burns, it was done, and this was found that the Dua classification is much superior to the Roper Hall. So this is again a potential question that which one is better, it is the Dua classification. Okay. So it is something like this, that they are dividing the ocular surface in grades 1, 2, 3 and 4. We have prognosis, whether it is good, whether it is guarded, whether it is poor, and it actually depends upon the limbal ischemia. So lesser is the ischemia, good is the prognosis, and as this ischemia will increase, the prognosis will also become from good to fair and fair to poor. Okay. So these are the classification, but you don't really need to cram each and every word. You should know that what are the factors on which they are dependent, and basically with the increasing ischemia, the prognosis will going to become worse. Okay, and now coming to the medical care, how will you treat such a patient? Regardless of the underlying chemical involved, whatever is the chemical, acid, alkali, you have to look at particular points. The first is remove the offending agent as early as possible. Number 2, promoting the ocular surface healing, because surface healing is the priority at that time. Number 3, controlling the inflammation. It is causing a lot of intraocular inflammation that can lead to even rise in intraocular pressure. Preventing the infection, because super added secondary infections can further precipitate the condition. And finally, if there is any secondary glaucoma that has occurred, then you have to treat that also. Now coming to the immediate medical management, I think not only the medical personnel, even the normal people should know, because in every domestic case we are actually using so many chemicals, we are exposed to chemicals every now and then. So even if at home we do not have any medical help, we should know what should be the ideal first aid. So let us see. First you have to remove that chemical as early as possible. I think that is not a job that cannot be done at home. Even when somebody is calling for help, ambulance is coming, or whether you are transiting and you are in the transport procedure, even that time you can do it. So what you can do, immediate copious irrigation of the eye every second. And what are the things that you have to use? Do not use water, okay, do not use water. What are the things? The best is the balanced saline solution, or you can use normal saline solution, you can use the ringer lactate, normal saline with bicarbonate, and the balanced salt solution. These are the things that you have to use, while the best is the sterile sterile balanced buffer solution. Now, two things are important. What are the best may not be available, but you should know what should not be used, and the water should not be used because that can lead to bhadaka, that is explosive. Now, even plain water may be used without waiting for the idle fluid. Preferably, eye should be anesthetized before the irrigation. Preferably, we should not use the water, but if nothing is available, it's better to go for it. Even you can use a tap water, because you have to remove the contact between the agent and the anterior segment, and if possible, anesthetize the eye before starting with the irrigation. Okay, so we have got so many things which are available in the market. We have got emergency eye wash, but you know, accidents are accidental, and most of the times we are not prepared for it, so you can go even with the water at that time. Now, eye irrigation, what is the ideal technique of doing it? Ideally, you should avert the eyelid, and if it is possible, double avert the eyelid, because we have got the deeply embedded particles. Like if you go for the line, we have deeply embedded, very deeply embedded tuna particles present there. So if you are irrigating after averting the eyelid, that will give you a very important benefit. Now, you have to remove all the solid particles from the under the eyelids. Now, the question is, how much time I should do the irrigation? So, the time of irrigation is not fixed. The thing is that till pH becomes normal. Till the pH becomes normal. Now, how will I come to know that pH has become normal? So, what you can do, you can keep your litmus paper under the eyelid. But suppose you do not have the litmus paper and you want to do the sufficient amount of irrigation, then you have to do at least 15 to 30 minutes depending upon the amount of agent that has gone into the eye. So, you have to continue the irrigation when your pH is below or it has reached above a pH of 7. So, means you should not wait at the pH till the time it becomes neutral. Okay, if no litmus paper is available, then it's always better go for the irrigation more than 20 minutes, don't settle for the less. And there are also special irrigating tubings which are available in the market. They are called as the Morgan's lens. So, another important potential questions, you have to do the irrigation till the time pH becomes normal, at least for 20 to 30 minutes. Special irrigating tubings are the Morgan lens, they are there. Okay. Now, as I told you before also, the water is contraindicated. So, ideally we should not use water, especially in the cases of the heavy metals. It can be sodium, it can be potassium, we have calcium, calcium hydroxide. Why? Because it is reacting violently and exploding with the water. It produces a caustic hydroxide, liberating too much amount of heat, and therefore result in the thermal as well as chemical burn both. So, basically if you are doing that, you are increasing the severity as well as degree of burn. Earlier it was only the chemical burn, and now you are going to the thermal burn also. Now, coming to the immediate treatment, what are the things? So, you have to brush off and pick out from the skin as many particles as you can. You have to do immediate irrigation, you have to do the double eversion to remove the deeply seated particles. Then you have to do the debridement, you have to remove all the dead epithelium, the necrotic material. Okay. And it's better that give a direct jet of water so that all the things have come out. You have to remove the particles at the earliest. Ignition of the particles will occur, but if the flow is great enough, heat will be dissipated. Now, what happens when you are giving a direct jet? Sometimes if it is a water, then it can lead to explosion, but slowly and gradually that heat will be dissipated by the water. Okay. Now, see. This is the technique how we can irrigate, and usually what do we advise is that if it's a bilateral condition or even if it's a unilateral condition, use your both hands so that you can give jet of water by both of your hands in the eye, so that your forceful thrust is created, and that forceful thrust is sufficient to remove those particles from the eye. Okay. Now history, though I told you that at this time it is one condition where the history and examination are delayed, but if somebody is doing this irrigation and you have extra people there who can take the history, then you can notify the time of injury, at that time I was rinsed or not, okay, what was the mechanism of injury, what was the type of chemical, is there any packing of that chemical available, so that you can look at the constituents, any eye protection used or not. So these are the things that can actually help you in the mode of management that you are going to plan for that patient. Okay. Now, if you know the chemical, then accordingly we can use strong acid or a weak acid, weak alkali, then we can use the particular antidote according to that chemical used. Okay. Now, what do you have to do? So, what you have to do is, after you have irrigated, you have removed the deeply embedded tuna particles, we have tried to debride the dead and necrotic tissue, we also try to remove the inciting chemical agent if there is anything. So, I told you it's always better to first give the topical anesthesia, and then what is there, you can take even the earbuds or any cotton swab and you can swipe around, so that if there is any foreign body left, that can also be removed. And I told you that double eversion of the eyelid is very, very important, because these particles have a tendency of going deep into the fornix. So till the time you are actually double everting the eyelids, you won't be able to remove them. Then another important thing is the paracentesis. What happens, I told you that it is going into the anterior segment, it is going into the cornea, conjunctiva, even into the aqueous humor as well as the vitreous. So in order to remove that, because you know that will lead to the increase in the intraocular pressure also, you can do some amount of paracentesis, and then that can be replaced. You can replace it with a buffered phosphate solution, right? That will even further help you in the reduction of the pH also, 1.5 units. Okay. Then early assessment. Now you have to do the assessment of the grade of the burn, so that you can rightly choose the treatment. So what is a graded approach? It can be a mild burns which is responding well to the medical treatments and the lubricants. It can be moderate to severe one which is requiring more intensive medical therapy or even the surgical therapy. Now, what are the medications? What are the medications that you should use? So, first of all is the steroids, that is the cornerstone of the therapy. They are reducing the inflammation, especially the neutrophilic infiltration, but at the same time they are also impairing the stromal healing, because you know they are reducing the collagen synthesis, they are also reducing and inhibiting the migration of the fibroblast. So, it must be tailored. You know, I think whenever we give the steroids, the treatment is not abrupt, or neither the starting nor the end, you have to tailor it. So how will you do it? It must be tailored off, it should be tapered, it should be tailored in such a way that you are actually tapering these drugs after 7 to 10 days, so that I can take the plus points and do not give the negative points to the patient. It must be then replaced by the topical NSAIDs, so that in long run you are not affecting the keratocyte function. Then another important thing that you are going to add is the ascorbic acid. So what is doing? It is reversing the localized tissue scorbutic state. You know, vitamin C is very much required for the collagen healing. It will help in the promotion of the collagen maturing by the corneal fibroblasts. So whenever we have got some stromal necrosis, some stromal injury, ascorbic acid remains an important thing. Topical sodium ascorbate 10% is given 2 hourly in addition to the systemic doses. Now you should not give the underdosage, and that is a major concern. Most of the time people start with the ascorbic acid, but underdosage remains a main problem. Then comes your citric acid. Citric acid is actually a powerful inhibitor of the neutrophilic activity. They reduce the intensity of the inflammatory response. And I think this is a very important thing, the role of the citric acid in the chemical injury. What they are doing, they are also doing the chelation of the extracellular calcium, and therefore it is also anticollagenolitic. So anticollagenolitic, anti-neutrophilic activity makes it a super duper agent to be used in the chemical injury. So what we can use now, this is again a MCQ, you are using sodium citrate 10% 2 hourly for about 10 days to eliminate the wave of phagocytes which are normally occurring after 7 days of injury. Then another important thing that you should give is the tetracycline. Now tetracycline, you know, it's an antibiotic, but main concern is not the antibiotic activity. Here main concern is it's a collagenase inhibitor, it inhibits a neutrophilic activity and also reduce the ulceration. So we are basically again giving the tetracycline both topically as well as systemically. You can give the doxycycline also. So tetracycline or any drug of its family we can start. Then along with it you will give the topical antibiotics, the lubrication with the steroid antibiotic combinations. Why? Because you always fear of symblepharon. I told you that symblepharon always remain a important concern whenever we are dealing with a case of chemical injury. Then what are the other things? You have to give the tear substitutes because symptomatic treatment has also to be given side by side. Along with it, you have also chances of cirrhosis. So in order to combat that cirrhosis and the problem of the dry eye, we give the tear substitutes. Even we can give the occlusive therapy to improve the moisture content. You can apply the band-aids of contact lenses for the same. Then we can also go with the analogous serums. These serums are your fibronectin as well as epidermal growth factors, which will again help in combating the serious side effects of your chemical burns. Then we have got the retinoic acid. Now this is again important because this promotes the goblet cell recovery, improves ocular cell function which has been destroyed due to the cirrhosis, okay, and also transdifferentiation of the conjunctival epithelium to the corneal epithelium, because you know phenotypically they are different. Okay, now if you are having just the grade 1, so what you are going to do, you are going to give the topical antibiotics, you are going to give the topical steroids, prednisolone, you are giving the preservative free lubricants also, and if there is pain you can even add the cycloplegic. This is just for grade 1. Now if you are having the grade 2, what are the things that you have to add? So we are continuing with the topical steroids. Here you have to give cycloplegic for sure. You have to add the oral vitamin C, ascorbic acid you have to give. You are even adding the tetracycline. Then we are also giving the systemic as well as topical vitamin C, the drops also, the systemic form also. Then you are giving your lubricants, and debridement is very essential. Debridement of the necrotic epithelium, applications of the tissue adhesives even if it is required. And finally we come to the grade 3 and 4. So obviously as you go on with the further grades, you have to even consider maybe the amniotic membrane transplants, and in the grade 4 usually you require the early surgery. You can go for the tenonplasty as well as amniotic membrane transplant. So with this we have come up to the end of the session with corneal and conjunctival burns, the chemical burns. I think it's a dreadful disease, and one must seek help as early as possible. If there is anybody you see that requiring help, it is not only just for the academic purposes, it is also for your ethical and moral purposes, because this is very common in society. Look for the help, start giving the first aid even before you call to for the help, because the earlier you intervene, better will be the results. Thank you and happy ophthalmology.